Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the GMC May membership meeting. All that conversation is, great to hear. Thank you, Heather. For those I haven't met, my name is Peggy Kelsey, and I'm the proud board chair of the GMC. I would like to begin by welcoming, as we always do, a new GMC member to today's meeting and into membership. Maya Smart. Maya, stand, wave to the crowd. Maya is a literacy advocate and creator of mayasmart.com, a literacy action plan from birth to 6 for parents and early readers. Welcome, Maya. The work of the GMC's new strategic plan is gaining momentum as our members engage more deeply through committee work and at these meetings. And our member engagement committee is working on other unique ways to create fellowship and opportunities for all of our members to lean into our work. Today's meeting would not have been possible without the generosity of our hosts, Foley and Lardner, and GMC members Andy Ronsky and Elizabeth Haas. In addition to this spectacular view, which we've all been enjoying today, and this great space, Foley is a dedicated host to many partners by sharing this space regularly in ways that allow organizations to contribute to their missions of community impact. I welcome Andy Ronsky, managing partner of Foley's Milwaukee office, to the podium to share more. Andy.
Thanks, everyone. Well, on behalf of Elizabeth and myself and everyone here at Foley, we want to welcome you. We love our space. We have really tried to make this a community space, from the nonprofit side to the company side. Many board meetings here, many events. We had the United Way all-member meeting here a little while ago. We've had the M7 partner breakfast here, and we're really pleased to have you all here today. John Schliffsky and I are having a competition of who can get more cool events in their building. Yeah, their space is pretty cool too. I'll take just a minute. I hope everybody knows a little bit about Foley and Lardner since we've been in the community for 185 plus years. But the firm has really changed very dramatically from what it was, and frankly from what it was when I started here 30 years ago. So we're now 26 offices nationwide. Our most recent addition was in Salt Lake City. And we are about 1,200 lawyers, and by revenue we are in the top 40 law firms in the United States, which is pretty good for a podunk Milwaukee law firm. So we're very proud of that. In terms of our kind of initiatives, we're embarked on a journey to kind of see the world through the eyes of our clients, is how we like to talk about it. And we've trying to transform ourselves from having a functional perspective, I am a litigator, I am an IP lawyer, I am a corporate lawyer, towards having more of an industry and a sector focus to meet our clients where they are, to be better overall advisors to them in the space. So we're really focused on 4 general sectors. We still have a general practice, but we are focusing on healthcare and life sciences, energy, where we are strong both in oil and gas with our offices in Houston, but we are market leaders in renewables and one of the leading law firms in terms of the renewables market, and that's something we're really proud of. Innovative technology, which stems a lot out of our IP practice and our patenting practice. And then kind of our core sector, at least for those of us here in Milwaukee, is our manufacturing sector. With our old line Midwest-based clients, kind of a union of our Detroit, Chicago, Milwaukee offices represent a lot of automakers, the Harley Davidsons of the world, the Rockwells of the world, people who make stuff. And I recently was privileged to become the head of our manufacturing sector. And that's really our bread and butter here in Milwaukee, working with many of you and many of your companies. On the community side, we're very proud of what we do in the community. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say there's probably not a nonprofit board where we have a presence. That is a focus of ours. We have a committee dedicated to it. One of our firm core values is to give back to the communities in which we live and work, and we take that very seriously. Our kind of signature community endeavor is our nationwide partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of America. We are the first law firm to engage in a nationwide partnership with them. We have engagement in each one of our offices across the firm, but our relationship here with Boys and Girls Club in Milwaukee has been particularly wonderful and particularly rewarding. And that's not just dollars, it's time, and it's time from our professional employees, our attorneys, and across the board. And it's really been an amazing thing, I think, for us personally to experience that, as well as hopefully for the boys and girls who are frequenting the clubs. So we hope that we are living the prongs of the GMC strategic plan, particularly on community engagement. I'm thrilled that you're all here today. I appreciate you taking a few minutes of your time to listen a little bit about Foley and Lardner, and have a great day.
Thank you, Andy and Foley, for your hosting of us today. I think it's come for the view, stay for the program, but if all of you came for the view, we appreciate that. This is special space, and it continues to be a reminder of what a special community we live in, and that there are places that are right here that are accessible to us every day that are very special in our community. I also want to take just a moment to honor a special member of the Foley team who passed away in April, my friend Jason Childress. Many of you may know Jason through his time as a lobbyist in Madison and someone who was engaged in public affairs around the state. I knew him well in my days in state government. He was also someone who worked closely with the GMC and with people in this room on many projects. And what Jason did in his career was to bridge political divides often and bring people together and parties together for the sake of the community and for the state. So we share our sympathies with his colleagues here at Foley, with his friends and his family. I have the pleasure of introducing a GMC colleague now, Trinice Ferguson. Just this past weekend, Trinice received her master's degree from Marquette University. You can give a round of applause for that. She has been a Trinity Fellow at the Greater Milwaukee Committee since 2022. Through that Trinity Fellow program at Marquette U, Trinice has worked hands-on with our MK United and community partnership work, as well as on our development efforts. The Trinity program has allowed Trinice to gain practical work experience during her studies and has allowed our community to benefit from her expertise. She's taken a leadership role in the crucial piece of residential engagement within MK United. She's developed a platform and a strategy around resident testimonies and feedback, specifically with our anti-displacement fund. And we've invited Trinice to briefly share insights into that resident engagement piece of community development work with you as it relates closely to our infrastructure and housing work and the topic we're going to talk about more today. Please welcome my colleague, Trinice.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Let's try it again. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. I would like to take this moment to thank GMC for providing me with the opportunity to speak with you all today. Again, my name is Trinice Ferguson, and for the past 2 years, I have been the Marquette Trinity Fellow at GMC, serving as the Resource Development Coordinator with the civic duty to fundraise for the Anti-Displacement Fund. I would like to thank and dedicate this presentation to our partners, sponsors, and homeowners. For their time and energy in advocating for this important program. Today, I present to you quite an emotional journey called the Homeowner Testimonial Project. The purpose of this presentation is to share how this project came to be, share homeowner testimonials, and spark systemic change behind displacement in communities of color. At this time, I ask if everyone can turn their attention to the screen and meet some of our homeowners. Let us honor their testimonials as vulnerable stories that are being shared today. Starting with a quote from Bill and Annie, a married couple who lives in Brewers Hill. Based on property tax pressures and displacement, they expressed, "We were one of the first people to move to Brewers Hill in 1968. When we first moved there, our taxes were $300. Now it's $5,000, and if I didn't appeal it, it would have been $8,000. Damn. So here's how it all started. During a fundraising meeting in December 2022, we agreed that the voice of a homeowner was a crucial component to enhance our fundraising efforts. Coincidentally, my final project in my ethics and public service class was to create a stakeholder feedback survey, hence the name the Homeowner Testimonial Project. In April of 2023, I mailed that same final project survey to our homeowners, receiving 62 responses. A month later, GMC and our program partners, Riverworks, hosted 2 input sessions that I called homeowner gatherings with 20 homeowners in attendance. Based on those conversations, we interviewed a couple of homeowners. And today, I share all of their stories to spread awareness about their homeowner experiences. Now we see who the fund serves. You may know that the average homeowner is Black or Latino, but did you know that most of them have owned their home since 1998? While the program serves homeowners between the ages of 40 to 101, yes, 40 to 101, the average homeowner is retired at 67 years old, some living with physical and mental disabilities, and most living with an income of $22,000 a year. The chart to your right presents the fund grant payments sent to the city on behalf of our homeowners. The blue bar represents the average grant payment, and the orange bar represents the highest grant payment. In 2019, the average grant payment was around $400, while the highest grant payment was around $1,800. Since then, the average grant payment has increased to $1,200, and the highest grant payment has soared to $3,700, meaning at least one homeowner is saving $3,700. After analyzing homeowner testimonials, I conducted research to understand the reasons behind these payment increases. 3 barriers to sustainable neighborhoods surfaced. Studies show that homeowners are housing burdened, spending more than 30 to 50% of their income on housing costs. Studies show that 1 out of 6 Milwaukee rental homes is owned by out-of-state landlords. And studies show that assessed values are significantly higher for Black residents than their white counterparts. In addition, homeowners of color are less likely to appeal their assessments and less likely to succeed when they do. Meet one of our homeowners, Mrs. Delia, a Milwaukee native, 61-year-old retired wife and caregiver for her grandson. For over 10 years, she has lived with her family in Walker's Point in her inherited home passed down by her grandpa. Mrs. Delia is just one of 150 families who are supported through the fund with a connection to their homes, neighborhoods, and Milwaukee. Based on the Anti-Displacement Fund survey results, it was indicated that 56% of homeowners have lived in their homes for over 20 years. 27% inherit their homes from their family, and 40% are Milwaukee natives who have worked and served as NAACP volunteers, board members, the Department of City Development employees, social workers, entrepreneurs, and activists. Not only is the fund supporting homeowners financially, it is an emotional support. A Brownsville homeowner said, "This program is a blessing and came to me at a time when I was about to give up hope. It really helped me during the most difficult times of my life, and it's still helping me." So I end this presentation with our story, making Milwaukee the best place to live, learn, work, play, and stay for all. On your tables, you will find a handout that explains the Anti-Displacement Fund and provides the testimonials shared with you all today. The Homeowner Testimonial Project is truly near and dear to me as I, along with Ms. Ruth and Ms. Clarissa, as you can see in the photos from Riverworks, and GMC staff Langston and his family have all lived or still live in one of the neighborhoods served. As a newly graduated young professional who is dedicated to social justice, I plan to continue this work with people like you who are committed to create transformative change for the city of Milwaukee. So I close this presentation by saying, since 2019, GMC has had a 15-year commitment to raise money for the fund. We are $1.5 million short of our $3 million goal. I hope that from this presentation, you have been moved to donate and share these stories to spark systemic change behind displacement in communities of color, not only for our homeowners who need and deserve our support, but to help all Milwaukee communities thrive. Thank you.
You know, I'm always proud to be a Marquette University graduate. I know we have plenty of graduates of other fine institutions around the state, but when I follow someone like Trinice, newly minted as a Marquette University graduate, I'm especially proud, so thank you, Trinice. And the success of our anti-displacement fund is in no small part due to the relationships that have been built with residents in our community through Trinice's work and others. Homeowners share difficult and personal stories at vulnerable points in their lives, as you saw, and these stories help guide and measure our progress. So now a couple of other updates about what's going on inside the GMC. Most of you likely saw the news from our partners at the Wisconsin Policy Forum that Rob Henkin will retire as president this summer. He provided an advance notice to me and to our board, and Rob went to some great lengths to make sure that all of us knew that this does not mean that he and the forum are stepping away from our joint work together. In fact, Rob's going to continue to do research at the forum, and while Jason Stein will take over as the new president, we expect that our partnership between the two organizations will only continue to grow in the future. In 2024, that partnership means conducting joint research on issues related to public safety and the courts with the Policy Forum. Late this month, our Public Safety Task Force will convene to discuss some of that research and provide feedback to the forum. We'll also gather with the city's Office of Community Wellness and Safety to learn about their efforts to invest in efforts to limit violence this summer in Milwaukee. We have had significant reminders in recent weeks that despite investment by the city in infrastructure and enforcement, that reckless driving is still a community-wide public safety epidemic. The GMC and the mayor will convene a group of leaders in early June to outline the city's current efforts and where we believe we need to continue to invest in and around public safety on our streets. Please look for an invitation to participate in that conversation in the days to come. The city officially named Jim Bowl its first innovation director just last week. Immediately, Jim is going to work on with our fiscal strength committee, which has been meeting with city staff over the first months of 2024. Our intent is to jointly focus on 5 to 6 projects that civic leaders and city staff can accomplish that will both save money and improve service delivery. These build on the roadmap that was laid out in the city's 2023 operational review. As most of us have been informed, the fiscal picture certainly has brightened for the city of Milwaukee, but the mayor and his administration still must find about $50 million in savings for the current year. We look forward to working in partnership as his 4-year term commences. Much of our ongoing work in education has been focused on early literacy and early childhood education. Our new GMC member, Maya Smart, was part of a group of leaders that met last week to dig into how we can take some of the success of the national Reach Out and Read program and expand it in areas of need in Milwaukee. I want to thank GMC member Kevin Long, who's doggedly pursued partners and pursued realistic goals to propel us forward on early literacy in Milwaukee. Langston Verdeen of our GMC team is also exploring statewide advocacy efforts around early childhood education with community leaders. The changing dynamics and new state legislative maps may provide opportunity, and we'll be working for the rest of this year with our local and state partners on that critical issue. One additional matter around education. In his inauguration remarks last month, Mayor Johnson indicated his desire to participate more fully in citywide discussions of K-12 education in Milwaukee. We've had some initial conversations with him and his team around that. While it'll take time for that to form more fully, I think I speak for the residents of this community and the people in this room that we welcome your voice and your further commitment to better outcomes for kids in our community, Mayor. Our Milwaukee Appraiser Diversity Initiative hosted a kickoff event a week ago at the Sherman Phoenix with Fannie Mae and the Appraisal Institute. The event introduced the appraisal industry as an attractive and sustainable career option with a vital role in reducing biases in home ownership appraisals that can weaken communities. The next step is to build out the first cohort of appraisers in training. That'll take place over the next several weeks. Now we're going to move on to the main topic today, which is directly related to our city's infrastructure, but also has a major impact on public safety, fiscal health, educational outcomes. That topic is housing. During a week when we celebrate the groundbreaking of a major expansion at the Milwaukee Repertory Theater, groundbreaking at the new Milwaukee Public Museum, and the opening of our expanded Baird Center, we have much to celebrate around the quality of life here in Milwaukee. But for way too many families, housing insecurity remains a huge challenge. With aging housing stock, lack of adequate inventory, home acquisition costs that far outpace income for many Milwaukee families, especially those in the African American and Hispanic communities, and predatory landlords, the environment for stable neighborhoods and growth in home ownership has wounded our community for more than a generation. After much work and many stakeholders involved, Milwaukee has a defined strategy and affordable housing plan, and the Community Development Alliance has been tasked with implementing that plan. Milwaukee's collective affordable housing strategic plan aims to meet affordable home ownership needs and rebuild Milwaukee neighborhoods. Teague Whaley-Smith, the Chief Alliance Executive, will walk through that strategy with support from Joanna Bouch from VIA CDC and Ray Johnson, a local homeowner. First, we're going to hear from Steve Radke, Northwestern Mutual Foundation's president and a fellow GMC member. Steve will share the role that local corporations and Northwestern Mutual have played in strengthening neighborhoods by addressing capacity, safety, and housing through a collective impact lens. I welcome Steve Radke.
Thank you, Joel. And I'll be brief because I know I've seen Teague talk a number of times and he'll do a much more compelling job than I can talking about this issue. So I'm going to just say a few words. And I'd also want to start by saying, there are many other people, many people in this room who could give this talk just as well as I could, because we've had some great partners in this housing space and the place-based initiative space with us. When we think about the great work of Dan Bader and the Bader Foundation, the Zilber Foundation, I don't know if Gina's here, and Ellen at the Greater Milwaukee Foundation have all been wonderful partners. And I know I'm omitting other people in the room who've been sharing this work with us and have the same amount of commitment and dedication to it. What I wanted to do just very quickly is walk through a couple of the touch points of Northwestern Mutual's journey in this space, because we weren't always sure that we wanted to be terribly involved in the housing issues. So back in 2012, we, like many of you, are so proud of our community, but felt troubled by the consistent racial disparities we see, and we had a strategic overhaul of our foundation, and we said we needed to do more in that space to try to end some of those injustices. And what we did back then was we really leaned into an Obama administration initiative called the Building Neighborhood Capacity Program. And what we did is we chose 3 neighborhoods in the community, Monty Metcalf Park and Muskego Way, and with many others tried to work with those communities to have resident-led revitalization plans and try to implement those plans. So again, working with those neighbors, we tried to work on things like safe neighborhoods, strong families, and healthy and thriving children and youth. And in all of our conversations we had with residents and community leaders, the issue of housing kept coming up. Because as Joel mentioned, and I know Teague mentions, you can't have, or it's much more difficult to be well educated, to hold a good job, to be healthy if you don't have good housing. But we felt at the time that, boy, it was a bit of too big of a challenge for us, that there were all sorts of city programs, county programs, federal programs. What role could Northwestern Mutual play in this process? So while we heard residents talk about it, we weren't quite sure if we had a role. So fast forward a few years to 2016, and this book came out. And if nothing else, I'd say if you view yourself as a leader in Milwaukee and you haven't read the book Evicted, go out and buy a copy and read it. Like, I'll buy you a copy if you haven't read it yet. Because this book really took the data and numbers you see and really personalized it. And it's hard to see the stories in there in our community and not be moved by it and say, boy, what can we do to try to change things right here in our city? So we kind of, wouldn't say it's just that, but these continuing conversations let us think, okay, maybe we should do a little bit more in this housing space, or at least try to dabble and see if we can learn more about how we can play a role. So in one of our neighborhoods, the Amani neighborhood, back in 2018, 2019, we devised a plan to do a pilot block where we took the block on 26th Street between Locust and Chambers and said, what if we see if we can improve every house on that block? Let's meet the neighbors, let's talk to them, let's see what can be done to improve your house. Do you need a new roof? Do you need a new porch? And we worked with partners in the community to make that happen. We learned a lot in this process, but it was at a very micro level. So we thought more needed to be done at a systemic level. And one of the other big things we did along with our friends at Bader and GMF is we commissioned a Wisconsin Policy Forum study, which really took a look at all of the different players in the community and came up with some conclusions, wanting that we do need a comprehensive strategy. And we thought that there was no one better to do that than the CDA, which has already been working with many of these partners. And we thankfully had Teague Whaley Smith to kind of take it from there and streamline that plan and really come up with a strategic plan. And as you'll hear, it has many different components, from home buyer readiness, alternative lending, supply chain of entry-level homes, acquisition fund, all of the pieces that are needed to really make a change in our community. So with that little bit of background, I'll turn it over to Teague to give you all of the nitty-gritty details. So take it away, Teague.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Teague Whaley Smith, and what really drives me is I want to make Milwaukee the best place on planet Earth, particularly for those families that have left out of the larger social, political, and economic systems. And I'm blessed to be able to do that during my day job as the Chief Alliance Executive for this group called the Community Development Alliance. And so the reason that the Community Development Alliance decided to focus on housing is because it really is the primary social determinant of health. There is incredible data that is out there that illustrates that if you want to work on education, you can have a 30% drop in you can get a 30% increase in getting kids to school. So used to looking at my slides, and it's a little tiny screen out here. But if you want to reduce the dropout rate in schools, you want to focus on housing. Why is that? Well, any teacher can tell you that they want kids in the classroom as long as possible. Of course, we learn a lot from Sweden, and in Sweden, you have the same teacher for 6 years. Well, in many Milwaukee circumstances, you have that child for 6 months. You don't even have them for a full year because rents are so high that families will pay the first month and first month's rent and deposit, and then not pay rent again because the rents are too high, and it takes 3 or 4 months to get evicted, and then that child needs to move into another home and into another school, and has a devastating impact on their education. When it comes to crime, we know that you can reduce crime by physically investing in the infrastructure of housing to the tune of about 20%, including a reduction in homicide rates by investing in housing, because housing and home ownership are the root of our democracy and our civic participation, and have the feeling that people belong in their neighborhoods. And then Steve mentioned the book Evicted by Matthew Desmond. Matthew Desmond has done some incredible research since then, because we always thought the American dream was to get a good job and then get a good home. But it turns out the path also flows the other direction. That in order to take advantage of job opportunities, apprenticeships, workforce development opportunities, you need to be in stable housing. Because if you're not in stable housing, you're just like that kid in the classroom moving every 6 months. And ultimately, we measure this by overall health. And families that are in stable housing have 18% improved health rates. And that's about the difference in life expectancy between Black Milwaukeeans and white Milwaukeeans. And so we really believe that if you focus on housing, you can lay the foundation to work on all these other areas. Doesn't mean we stop on working on any of these areas, but it does mean that we prioritize housing to set people up for their best opportunity. And so how do we get there? We think we get to there, and we get to racial equity through housing, through collective impact. Some of you are experts in collective impact, but you're certainly experts in working together by the very nature of coming to a group like the GMC and working on problem solving together. Turns out there's some really great research behind collective impact and what to focus on first. The Collective Impact Forum did a study in about 2020 that looked at 25 different communities, all of which had success, whether they were trying to work on seatbelt usage or smoking cessation. All 25 communities had success, but only in 5 of those communities could the success be attributed to the work of the coalition rather than larger socioeconomic trends. So for example, if we all were working on wages over the last 3 years, we could declare victory because wages have gone up, but it would have nothing to do with what we did locally and has to do with these national trends. But in these 5 communities, they went and succeeded in spite of those national trends. And what this research showed is that there were 2 critical components to focus on that Milwaukee was missing: a common agenda and a staffed backbone organization. CDA had been around for about 10 years at that point and was kept afloat by very dynamic staff and leaders from foundations and the city and others that donated their time, but they all had full-time jobs doing other things, and momentum would start and stop and start and stop. And then a common agenda. It wasn't that we didn't have a housing plan in Milwaukee. In fact, quite the opposite. We had 25 different housing plans, and we weren't working from the common agenda. So the work that we do at CDA, our common agenda is something called the Collective Affordable Housing Plan. A huge shout out to Mayor Johnson, because as council president, he put into the budget that the city needed a housing plan and they needed to work with larger partners to do that. And that's exactly what happened. There was a year-long process with about 100 different allies that participated. Many of you are in this room. Thank you for participating in that. And ultimately, this plan was approved not only by the city council and the mayor, but also the county board of supervisors and the county executives, and also by the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, and also the Zilber Family Foundation, and also Habitat for Humanity, and also Axe Housing. And the list goes on, so that we're all working from the same common agenda. When it comes to the shared data and the shared measurements, we are tracking both population level trends. So we have the Milwaukee County Housing Dashboard that tracks all of the KPIs from a housing perspective and the progress we are making. But we also have program level data. All of the homebuyer counseling agencies are reporting through us. And so we now know where every single person in homebuyer counseling is, what their debt to income ratio is, are they getting inventory, are they getting loans, et cetera. And then we get to what are mutually reinforcing activities. For us, what that means is we build systems that are too expensive or too complicated for one party to do by themselves. The best example is we have been preyed upon by predatory investing in our Milwaukee neighborhoods. I'll show you that data in a minute. And we needed somebody to fight on behalf of homeowners, because no one homeowner can buy 10 properties from a landlord, keep one for themselves and sell the other 9. So we needed to intervene. So in partnership with many of you in this room, we were able to raise $8 million for Axe Housing to create an acquisition fund. Last year, they purchased 50 properties to get back in the hands of homeowners. This year, it's going to be 80, and they have sites on getting to 100 homes per year back into the hands of homeowners. So that's the kind of work that we do to try to advance this coalition work. And we also believe in continuous communication. So we quarterly have meetings where about 100, 115 allies participate to provide direction to the overall coalition. So these are some of our partners. I can't just go past the partner slide. These are some of our partners. As Steve mentioned, the foundations have been at the table from the very beginning, and then the city as well. We started to get other participation from the city, the state, the feds, and then corporations started to join as well to support this overall mission. Last year, both Molson Coors and American Family joined the overall alliance. But at CDA, we don't swing any hammers and we don't provide any direct homebuyer counseling assistance. We are a strategy and fundraising organization. We are the glue that keeps the ecosystem together and people communicating with each other to drive strategy in the Milwaukee market. So you'll see some of our partners on the screen there from all of the homebuyer counseling agencies, together with nonprofit developers like Via CDC, Habitat for Humanity, and others to get this work done. So a couple of highlights over the last year. I mentioned that acquisition fund. It's the first home ownership based acquisition fund in the country. And again, $8 million, 50 homes already in its first year of operation. In partnership with Habitat for Humanity and others, we were able to double the production of entry-level homes. For the last 60 years, there's been about 20 homes per year, which have been developed almost exclusively by Habitat for Humanity and a few others. And we were able to move that to 40. We have a plan this year with partners like VIA CDC and others to get to 60. We don't know where the 80 are going to come from next year, but that's where we need help. And ultimately, we also want to build a system to have 100 homeowners in new construction entry-level homes each year. And then resident collaboration. My colleague Cordella Jones is our resident collaboration director. Everything we do is resident-based. Last year, she hosted 32 different resident collaboration sessions throughout the city to make sure that our strategies are what people have actually asked for. So in the plan, there are about 20 different strategies, but of course you cannot do 20 things at once. So part of the coalition's work has been get people to focus. Those of you that were part of the plan know that I constantly said, we need one priority, we want one priority, we need one priority. We got 4, and I'll live with that. At least it's not 20, and we've been able to make significant momentum on each of these. So the first is to grow home buyer counseling and down payment assistance by 10% each year. That is the foundation of the work that we do. The second is to build the acquisition fund, which I mentioned, that is now built. The third is we want to convert every single of the 3,000 vacant lots throughout the city into entry-level homes for homeowners. And then finally, we need alternative lending strategies. Those of you in banking and financing know that banks don't lend over what's called 40% debt to income. We have people that are resting above 40% debt to income that would actually save money by paying a mortgage that's lower than they're currently paying in rent. So we're sticking people in a situation that their debt to income ratio just gets worse and worse. And so we're working on developing a product there as well. We believe in bringing organizational excellence to the table. And so every quarter we publish our objectives and key results to the overall alliance to say this is where we think we're going to go, this is where we need to go, are we headed in the right direction? And we have made a ton of mistakes on the way. And so one of the biggest mistakes we made is that nobody in the history of man or womankind has said, I got a great new job and it pays 60% AMI. Nobody talks like that, but that's the category that housing funders use. It means area median income, and it's a terrible measure of dealing with poverty issues and home ownership issues for the average Milwaukeean, because no one knows what that means. We could do a survey in here, and I bet you there's maybe 5 people in this room, maybe Trina in the back from Housing Resources Inc. could tell us exactly what that number is, but the rest of us don't know. So we need to translate that into what people can actually understand, and we do that by talking in dollars and cents. And so we've taken that strategy of what good housing policy is that 30% of your income or less is spent on housing. For early childhood educators, that's about $650 a month or less in either a rent payment or a housing payment. And really through good policy, we think we can provide an available home for everyone. The other thing we identified is that the biggest racial equity decision you can make is which income group that you focus on. And you have those early childhood educators, the warehouse workers, the healthcare aides that are making that $15 an hour, and they can afford that $650 a month in rent or less, or that's about a $45,000 home. That doesn't exist in the Milwaukee market anymore. That middle category that you see is the average Milwaukeean that makes about $50,000 a year, a teacher, a firefighter, et cetera. They can afford about a $100,000 home. Also very rare in the Milwaukee market. And then you get up to what's called 80% of the area median income, and they can afford homes for about $240,000, also becoming increasingly rare in this economy. But again, the average person in Milwaukee County makes about $50,000 a year. They need a $100,000 home. So if we want the average Milwaukeean to be a homeowner, we need to figure out how to build $100,000 homes. And this is particularly important for racial equity. So we did a market segmentation to identify that if the home ownership rate was equal for all races in Milwaukee, in other words, if you couldn't predict home ownership rate by somebody's race, then we would have an additional 32,000 new Black and Latino homeowners. So that's the number we need to focus on. We essentially need to double that number. We will never get there if we just focus on higher income families. Those higher income families have a higher home ownership rate already, and it's a smaller segment of the population. We need to be serving those families that are making that average salary of about $50,000 per year down to those early childhood educators that are making $20,000, $25,000 a year. That's how we're going to drive racial equity. If you allow me a brief digression, this is how my family built intergenerational wealth. Sorry about the technology here, folks. So this home here is how my family built intergenerational wealth. This is Winnemac Street in Madison, Wisconsin. And my grandfather built this home for about $12,000 in the 1950s when the average income was about $6,000. So in our country's history, we have figured out how to build entry-level homes for 2 years of the average salary of single income earning families. That's how strong this system has been. When people ask me, is there an example of other people fixing this throughout the country, throughout the world? And I say, you don't need to travel geographically, you need to travel in time. We had it right in the 1950s because we had massive subsidy that came into communities to help folks, but it was folks that looked like me. So 98% of the VA loans went to white families. A VA loan is what my grandfather used to build this. We know the discriminatory practices of redlining in our community and other things that allowed people that look like me to gain incredibly wealth through housing at the exclusion of everybody else. And if you apply this lens over the city of Milwaukee, what you realize is that 95% of the single family homes that were built in Milwaukee were built prior to 1968. Why is that date important? Well, that's the date of the Fair Housing Act. So prior to the Fair Housing Act, 95% of the homes were built. People could legally discriminate who they sold those homes to, and that's exactly what they did through restrictive covenants, redlining, and other practices. And then at that time, we stopped building housing. We stopped building housing because the city was full. We were full to the brim. There was no place left to build except the suburbs. And to this day, the suburbs still have rules like you have to build a home that's 2,500 square feet or more. So we moved from racial segregation to economic segregation. So in our country's history, we've never provided entry-level homes for Black and Latino families. And since this time, a couple very disturbing things have happened. One is the average home has gotten really, really big. So my grandfather's home was about 1,000 square feet. That was the average home constructed in the 1950s. By the 1970s, it was 1,700 square feet, 70% bigger, 70% more expensive. Today, that number is 2,500 square feet, is the average home that's built. And so that home would sell for about $400,000 to $500,000 just on construction costs alone. The other really devastating thing that happened is that had the white families that owned homes during that big peak, as there were migrating Black and Latino families coming to Milwaukee, had they sold those homes to those folks, we wouldn't have a racial equity crisis in home ownership. In fact, we'd have the highest home ownership rate in the country. But that's not what happened. 40% of the inventory was sold to investors rather than to homeowners. And that was not distributed equally. In largely white neighborhoods, less than 20% of the homes were sold to investors, and in many Black neighborhoods, up to 80% of homes were sold to investors. This is a modern problem. What you see on the screen here is after the 2008 financial crisis, property values were very, very low, which is typically good for entry-level homeowners, but nobody was lending any money to them for several years. So if you had your own money, you could come in and swipe up as many properties as you want. And then those folks got eaten by the larger fish, and eventually they got eaten by the biggest fish, the sharks in the industry that have purchased things by portfolios. So every blue dot represents a home that has been sold as part of a portfolio that a homeowner never had access to. And you can see this started in 2017. And in 2017, the city council and the administration at the time passed very middle-of-the-road legislation to try to stop this, which is to require every landlord to register and keep their property code compliant. Within months, the state of Wisconsin legislature came in and stripped Milwaukee and other municipalities from regulating landlords. So we saw this coming, but that is the policy of the state. It's still the policy of the state today. It's the kind of thing that needs to change so that we have more control over these issues in Milwaukee. This is largely a result of 3 predatory investors. 5 years ago, they owned about 17 properties. Now they own over 1,400 properties. They were all on adjustable rate financing at the enterprise level. So as interest rates went up, they now have to sell some of these properties, which could be a good thing, but they're selling them for twice what they purchased just 5 years ago, fundamentally changing the home ownership market. And as a consequence, we have lost 20% of Black home ownership in Black neighborhoods and 15% in Latino neighborhoods just from the years 2010 through 2019. So this is not a 1960s problem. This is a current problem we need to address. So ultimately, Here's how we see the problem. There are 17,000 Black and Latino families that are aspiring to buy that $125,000 home or less, but each year there's only 1,500 available on the market and 40% are being purchased by investors. So that those red X's need to be taken off the table so that homes that were built for homeowners go into their hands, but we still won't have enough housing because we haven't built housing for 4 generations here in Milwaukee. So ultimately, this is what the yearly picture looks like, is that we have 2,000 people every year that enter homebuyer counseling and seek down payment assistance and do the hard work to get their finances in order, and 600 of them are able to purchase homes. It's great, we should celebrate those 600 people, but we have 1,400 that are on the bench, and that 1,400 gets added every year. So we now have 2,800 people on the bench. So good news is, since we started the Collective Affordable Housing Plan, we've hit our 1,000th homeowner. But the bad news is we have 2,800 people on the bench to get through. So we strongly believe that the issue is inventory and credit, and we need to expand both inventory and credit to make this a reality for homeowners. So one way we do that is focusing on vacant lots. So yes, acquisition rehab needs to be part of the strategy, but that's not going to work in every neighborhood. Every red dot on this screen represents a property that's transferred each year. You can intervene on behalf of homeowners and make sure that goes to a homeowner. But in our core, formerly red-line communities, you see a lot of white dots and very few red dots, because landlords hold on to those properties because they're cash cows with no accountability, and there are very few properties because you have so many white dots, which are vacant lots. So if we're going to meaningfully move the homeownership rate in Black neighborhoods, we're going to have to start building entry-level homes. Fortunately, we have some amazing partners to do that, and one of those partners is VIA CDC that is working with us on an early childhood education program, so I'll hand it over to Joanna.
Thanks, Steve. Are you plugging for me?
You can try it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Teague, and thank you to the GMC. It's an honor to be here with you all this afternoon. Let's see, where are we at?
We'll go to the next one.
Arrows?
Just nod.
Oh, there you go. Okay. At VIA CDC, we are focused on multiple areas, all of which are our underlying vision for creating a world where all places equip all people to reach their full potential. VIA is a partner in building strong, healthy neighborhoods where all of us can thrive. Since our founding in 1995, VIA has leveraged more than $50 million in neighborhood investment with an eye towards safe, healthy, and equitable housing, jobs and businesses that provide economic opportunity, and connected grassroots leaders that collaborate to create the neighborhoods they envision. VIA's commitment to affordable housing developed in 2008 with the launch of our turnkey renovation program. The turnkey program purchases foreclosed and dilapidated properties and uses philanthropic support and grant dollars to then sell those homes back to income qualified families. It's been a very successful program since 2008. At the end of last year, we fully rehabbed and sold 33 homes to Milwaukee families. But we were still seeing a need for this work and a little opportunity for the rehab route. So last September, we doubled down on our commitment to affordable housing development with the beginning of new construction on vacant Milwaukee lots. Our current priority, as we've been talking about today, is providing quality housing for early childhood educators. Early childhood educators are critical to youth development. The key to starting children on a lifelong journey of learning starts with these educators and young people. However, increasingly, we are struggling to retain these educators, some of the folks that are doing the most important work in our community. And with that struggle, we're looking for opportunities to retain them, to keep them in our community. And we know that providing them access to opportunities for safe and healthy housing in the neighborhoods and communities they're teaching in can have a positive impact and effect on those neighborhoods, those communities, and our city. By supporting these teachers to access this housing, we're making a commitment. We're making a commitment and an investment in these educators that are doing very critical work. And we're also making a commitment into young people, to young families, to Black and brown communities, to Milwaukee. I think that, as we all know, during the pandemic, we learned that early childhood centers are critical, right? As we saw many of them close because of this healthcare crisis we were experiencing. We know that lots of families were struggling and wondering and having conversations on where their young person was going to get this education from. So this investment is necessary and critical. And we hope that we can replicate this work that we're doing here in the city of Milwaukee across the city and across the state. And I'm really proud to report that VIA has, just making sure we're on the right slide, that VIA has completed our first new construction home for early childhood educators. So the photo you'll see on the screen right now is a home that we broke ground on in last September. It is in the near south side in the Burnham Park neighborhood on South 35th Street. This is an 1,100 square feet home, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The basement has egress windows, and we were doing that with the intention behind, we know that our Milwaukee families are constantly growing, they're constantly housing multiple generations, and we wanted to give families that opportunity to grow in place. So the egress windows allows for a living space that is compliant with zoning. We also have also put in rough-in plumbing in the basement, so if families choose to add a second bathroom in their house, it's a more obtainable project. And we're going to be selling this home and the rest of our homes for $100,000, which makes those families that Teague was talking about earlier able to afford this opportunity. So this is our first home, and VIA is looking forward to building 13 more homes in the near south side and in the Washington Park neighborhood by the end of 2025. Thank you.
So I mentioned that we have 160 homes in the pipeline, and we have been utilizing ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan funds. So it costs us $250,000 to build an entry-level home. And we need to all just take a breath at that number, just to inhale and exhale on that number. Because if housing costs just increased by inflation, that home that my grandfather built for $12,000 would only cost $100,000 to build today. And so much has changed in the construction industry and the way that it's developed. Part of that is they are focused on building really big homes, 2,500 square feet or more. We also don't have the same vertical integration where you had a company that could move in that had their own carpenters, their own plumbers to just do this, and now you have profit margins at each of those elements. So $250,000 is the number. We've looked at it every which way, but and sideways. We're working on that number, and we will get that number lower, but that's where we're at right now. So we need to subsidize these homes by about $150,000 to make this happen. Your first thought is, that's a lot of money to give to one family. This isn't about one family. Homes go through multiple generations, and so there are deed restrictions that are put on properties so that these homes will last 100 years or more. So you're porting 5-6 families easily in each of these homes. And the ARPA funds are going away. Well-spent funds, but they are going away. So what's next? We need to figure out a way to locally provide some funding, but also bring in state funding and otherwise. The number one producing habitat for humanity in the country is Florida, because there's a $50,000 tax credit against corporate sales or income tax if you make a contribution to affordable housing. That's the kind of policy we need at the state level. We heard about the mayor's budget and trying to cut $15 million, so we need to be creative from there as well. We can do that through something called TID financing. So you look at buildings that are going up around you, and those are utilizing TID funds. And so in partnership with the mayor, with Commissioner Crump, and several council members, we are putting forth, wow, that was fast. We are putting forth in the July cycle the expectation of doing what's called a coordinated backbone TID, where we have multiple parties developing in the same space, can generate about $2.5 million of increment, but we need that money now, and we get paid back over 25 years. So these are the type of investment strategies we're putting forth that we need support on. But what really matters in all of this is the homeowners. And so I'd like to introduce my very good friend and a homeowner through Axe Housing, Ray Johnson, to tell their story.
Hi, good afternoon. Wow, okay, everybody's awake. So I stand before you today to share my homeownership journey with the support of Axe Housing. My story is one of determination, financial discipline, and Axe Housing. So like many people that look like me, I faced the daunting task of trying to save to buy a house, but I was burdened with debt, student loan debt, other kinds of debt that I just accumulated, and also not having the real estate institutional knowledge because I'm the first homeowner in my family. Please clap. So while I didn't have that down payment assistance or that generational family member to bounce ideas off of, I had Axe Housing, and they provided me with hope. They also provided me with free home buyer counseling, which was amazing. I had a great coach. His name is Tony, and Tony and I worked together. We went through all these sessions. We went through my credit report, and he gave me the knowledge and the confidence to go from an overburdened renter to a stable homeowner. That's exactly what I did 4 years ago. So, like I said, with Axe Housing, a lot of meticulous budgeting. I paid off like $12,000 in debt in like 10 months. It was insane. I had the support of like tons of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and ramen noodles, but also my son, who was 10 at the time, Elijah, who understood that no is a complete sentence in our family. I was able to buy a house, and Axe provided me with a $50,000 rehab loan to go through the rehab process and turn a 5-bedroom bungalow into the safe, code-compliant home of my dreams. And since then, I've been able to house my nephew while he was going to school. He's now a City of Milwaukee firefighter. And my son has his friends over all the time because we have so many bedrooms. And I just have so many more possibilities because of home ownership. Not only the things I just mentioned, but I have a job now where I actually work from home, so I just love being in my house so much. And 7 months ago, our family grew by 4 legs. We welcomed our dog, Zorro Diego, who's absolutely adorable. And none of that would be possible without Axe Housing. But now, as Teague mentioned, Axe Housing has this acquisition fund, and so now I have an opportunity to have a neighbor, because the house right next door to mine was acquired by Axe Housing, and they're sinking in like $200,000. Thank you to the City of Milwaukee for giving them some subsidy on that, to rehab that vacant property. It's looking really good. We got siding on the house. I say we, like I live there. But there's siding on the house now. It looks great. It's no longer an eyesore. And so those are one of those properties that Axe is investing in to really turn around our neighborhood, turn around the block, and give someone else an opportunity to buy that duplex. Hopefully it'll be my nephew, actually, will be my neighbor, to buy that duplex and just run our block. And I'm very excited to be a homeowner and to be here today. And if you have questions, I'll be here to be at a table talk so we can figure out how we're gonna solve this crisis. Thank you.
This is what CDA does, is we are in the business of being an accomplice. If you look at the 25 different resident-based plans, what you find in them is that they are screaming for home ownership that is affordable for the people that already live there, and they're screaming for accomplices to come help them. So we're in the business of trying to recruit as many accomplices as possible. Lots of ways to plug in. The first is, doesn't hurt to join our mailing list so you can see what policy and other things are coming down the pipeline or investment opportunities. If you go to housingplan.org and just click on subscribe. The second is, we know that the best way to advance this work is to make sure it's meeting your needs and your strategy. So when you have ideas on how to improve the city of Milwaukee through housing, whether it's from a workforce angle or anything else, please reach out to us at ideas@housingplan.org. There will be flyers out on the table if you want to grab one on the way. And ultimately get going. We are not a bureaucratic entity that says yes or no to things, but we are able to help bring other partners. And so what we typically do in that regard is we help you find people to match your investment. So for example, Northwestern Mutual is invested in the Amani and Metcalf neighborhoods. We were able to get the Department of Workforce Development grant at the state level. We were able to bring in American Family and some other partners as well. And we hope to do that with all of you and the housing efforts that you are engaged in as well. So please reach out to us to discuss that strategy, because we really feel that by providing a quality, affordable home for every Milwaukeean, we can achieve racial equity in home ownership. Thank you. I appreciate you. Am I handing it to, who am I handing it to, Heather, for this? I'm doing this part? I can do this part. Let's do it. Let's go. All right, so at this point, we're going to break off into the table talk. You should have a facilitator at each of your tables. And we'd really like to learn from each of you how we can magnify or reinforce what is currently being done. If there's a particular investment strategy or otherwise that you think can be elevated by the people in the room. And then I encourage you all to tell your own housing stories. I shared a housing story at a Habitat for Humanity event, and I shared that as a third-generation homeowner, because I know my grandfather's story, and I double-checked that. I'm actually a sixth-generation homeowner. That's how far my privilege goes back from some really ugly, racial history in this country that advantaged my family. So we hope that you'll, talk about your own housing stories and ask that question: is that pathway still available for your kids, or is that path available for your grandkids, or what the case may be? And to talk about the barriers that you see happening and what we can do to overcome them. Stu.
Steve, would you mind if I just make a comment about this? First thing, what Ray just shared with us, very inspirational. I love it. Thank you very much. What you're doing, I think, is fantastic, and it's great for the city. We need, throughout our country, we have a housing shortage, and we need a variety of housing. The luxury high-rises, some of these are $15,000 a month. Thank you. They take care of their own, the big ones. We need more resources for affordable housing. And yet there's a lot of resources available. So keep on doing what's going on there. We still don't have enough for the missing middle. The city has a great story. We have a lot of businesses that want to be in our city and move downtown. They still need housing for those employees. Milwaukee Tools engineers make high 70s, low 80s. City of Milwaukee needs housing for its workers. And again, we don't have enough housing for that. Healthcare workers, teachers, we need more housing there. And that's where TIF can be an incredibly powerful tool. No, luxury housing, it doesn't need it. But it needs for the housing in the center, and that'll help keep the city vibrant. Our city has more street activity than many other large cities such as Minneapolis or downtown Dallas. You're seeing activity on the street. We need to keep reinforcing that, keep our city strong for not just now, but for the future. So, I'd like to encourage that tool also to be used in a very targeted manner and part of the overall plan for the city. Thank you.
I actually just joined the board of CDA, so I'm very passionate about ensuring that everyone has an opportunity for homes because we are inextricably interconnected. So I'm not going to take more of our 10 minutes, but I really want us to jump into, we can talk for hours, but let's jump into very busy. How many projects do we have? Six. And I'm Linda. I'm Gina.
Okay, we have just a few minutes left, and we've got a very good giveaway for those of you who are in the room who want to stay till 1:30. Peggy's got something special to give away today, so I'm going to just, Teague's going to just keep talking. Just keep talking, Teague. I make a joke about it, but I think we all gained a lot from your presentation here to the whole group, and I'm sure the people who are sitting there talking to you, it's valuable for them too. I just want to invite, if there are anybody who wants to either ask a question of somebody who is up here or a topic that was discussed at your table that you just think that is valuable in a few minutes for the group that's out here. Anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
So great commentary at our table. One of the things that just jumped out is what Dr. Raymond shared with us in regards to the root cause of health and well-being, or not healthy and have a well-being, has to do with these issues that emerge and emanate out of challenges, health challenges that then evolve and become part of a problem. And I think, if I say it correctly, the solutions here are more important than the health care we receive. Is that correct, Doctor? Did I say that correctly? And then one last question for the people who did present. I'm hoping you're familiar with something known as benefits cliffs. Benefits cliffs in America are a huge dilemma. Millions, it may be as many as tens of millions. There's about 100 million people in America who are low and moderate income, 80% or less of area median income. And I'm curious as to how you're navigating that issue for the gentleman who spoke in regards to benefits cliffs. And benefits cliffs, in short, is where I take a higher paying job and get $1 more an hour, and all of a sudden I lose my benefits, whether it's Affordable Care Act or a number of other benefits that are up there. Thank you.
Yeah, so our goal is to advance racial equity by providing a quality, affordable home for every Milwaukeean. And the biggest decision you can make is the income group that you focus on. You focus on families that are $50,000 or less, you're going to move racial equity in a positive direction. If you start to dump resources if you start to spend resources into families that are making $50,000 or more, you just have a bigger pool of the white population. It's more than half of it. So I just want to share a quick anecdote with you, is that you're going to hear a lot about the term workforce housing. And when you hear that, I want you to ask the question, so what dollar amount qualifies? I was on stage once where somebody suggested that the problem in Wisconsin for workforce housing was not enough CEO housing. And my jaw kind of hit the ground, because it's not what the data would suggest, despite some anecdotes around that. The state of Wisconsin passed a $400 million low-interest loan program for workforce housing. $400 million, okay? I'm going to put my neck out here. I don't think $1 of that is going to be spent on home ownership in Milwaukee. Here's why. Is that the vast majority of that was for Main Street redevelopment housing, which is rental by its nature because it's above a business, or redoing commercial space, which is, by default is going to be a rental situation. And then in the home ownership aspect of it, which is the biggest share, $150, $200 million, it can only be spent on infrastructure. It can only be spent on roads, utilities, etc. So on these 3,000 vacant lots we already have the roads, we already have the utilities, and I just want to say is that at some point we have to call this out and say that this is intentional. And so when you hear workforce housing, when you hear these other things, I want you to ask that question. And if that number of people that qualify, if it's above 50,000, just know that you could be making the racial equity worse. Because when you look back at what happened in the 1960s, 98% of the resources went to families that looked like me. We don't want to repeat that pattern happening right now. So there is clearly a demand for housing across the country in every sector. But when you look at home ownership for Black and Latino families, we've never invested in them. And so we need to change that trajectory in history. Other folks will get the resources. They are getting the resources already because that's the momentum of this country. We need to raise our hands and say, okay, what about the folks that don't look like us?
One note that came up in our conversation, Teague, is that, and I think this goes for everybody here, is that there's a role for advocacy. We are all getting better informed on here, but whether it's you talked about the distinction between Wisconsin and Florida on a housing matter. If there is an organized way in which we can have some impact on things like that, I think that's part of why it's valuable to have your input today in the CDA, because you need other advocates to be better informed and be advocates for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So through the generous funding of some partners, we are hiring a policy director to work on these issues. So please subscribe at housingplan.org. There are lots of opportunities. For example, we had 30 people show up at a Whitefish Bay Village Board hearing. They had their first affordable housing development happen there. We've had folks come to support the mayor's budget. The mayor has put $2 million in down payment assistance, which has doubled the amount of down payment assistance in the city. So we need your voice to do big things. So we will be working on that $50,000 tax credit issue at the state and need your help. We also believe there are some opportunities to do some things locally on the predatory investing. So please subscribe again at housingplan.org and you'll be a part of that network.
And we will send out the slides from today after the meeting so everybody has that and can access that. And instead of Teague and I continuing to have a conversation here, it's probably time for Peggy to join us. But thank you, Teague, and thank you everybody for your involvement today.
Thank you, thank you. It's a great crowd today. We were very excited about the number of people who signed up. Part of it probably has to do with the great space, but we think even more it's interest in this topic. Teague, you've got our attention on this, so we appreciate it. So thank you for participating today. Teague, thank you for sharing all of your stories, particularly about your grandfather's home. And we hope it encourages the rest of us to explore more deeply the causes of our community's lack of affordable housing. We do all know that safe, affordable, and stable housing is the foundation for health, education, safety, and wellness. And it was one of the things we were talking about at our table is that just that awareness and what you raised, Dr. Raymond, at your table about the fact that having safe, affordable housing can be the most important thing in determining the health of the children and others in our community was something many of us truly did not fully appreciate. So we appreciate hearing about that today. The GMC is committed to making a difference in these areas, and they are inextricably linked to the GMC's strategic priorities. Before we adjourn, I want to remind our members to please make sure you have the June meeting in your calendars. Continuing our recent pattern of getting out and about in our community, I'm really excited to let you know that the June 10th meeting will be hosted by Manpower. Thank you, Michelle Nettles, who's sitting at our table, at Manpower's beautiful headquarters. We're working on some really special content for that meeting, which will include a conversation with Governor Evers. So really excited about that. Make sure that's on your calendar, and we look forward to seeing you there. So I'm going to adjourn today's meeting and turn to the next exciting thing that those of you who've been here recently know that we have a little giveaway at the end of every meeting. And community partners are stepping forward to donate things to us so that we can give them away to members to highlight the important businesses that are alive and well in Milwaukee. I'm going to look at you, Tina, because I remember the last time this happened and the look on your face. So our friends at Southwest Airlines have decided again that they want to help kick off the summer season, and they've given us 2 round-trip tickets to give away at today's meeting. And so I'm really happy to tell this person, Heather will be reaching out after this to give you the details. I will also let you know, as is always the case, sometimes people take these giveaways to pay it forward. That's always an option to you if you want to donate it to a nonprofit or give it to somebody else. That's entirely up to you. And Mr. Daniel Jackson, Market President of Ascension, did he just leave? He's going to have that opportunity. I made sure he was still sitting there when I stood up. So thank you all for being here. We look forward to seeing you in June.